Welcome back to the program. Lots to raise with a super panel tonight. Joining us is regular panellist Janet Olgerson from The Australian.
Chris.
Hi, Janet. Simon Cowan from the Centre for Independent Studies and Fiona Scott from the seat of Lindsay, not Fiona Lindsay, as I stupidly said before. And Fiona, great to have you on the program, especially just 2 sleeps out from the budget. As I said, who can sleep when it's only 2 sleeps to the budget? And one of the central things about this budget, I think, we all know the political problems from the first budget. Very ambitious, a lot of reform in there that no one really knew about. It was just dumped on the public in the lead up to the in the budget speech. Now there's a much greater debate about what's going to be in the budget. Tony Abbott said it ought to be kind of dull. We know it's not going to be a savage cutting budget, and I'm thinking it's obvious that primarily the reason it's going to be a dull budget is to protect people like you. It's a political budget to make sure that people like you have more chance of surviving in your seat and you're happier in the party room.
It's an interesting observation, and I don't know whether I'd necessarily agree with what you say there. I think the budget is designed to fix the structural deficit that we do have in the federal budget. But it's, as the Minister was saying, it's about the incremental increase, the incremental repair.
We weren't talking about incremental repair, though, last year, were we? We were talking about a crisis.
But we've also had challenges in the Senate, which, Labor, although they might say on one hand, yes, we want to, it's important to fix the budget, they've done everything they can to block that. Now, you can do various things in this space. Now, if you increase the size of the pie, increase the size of the economy. Now, the childcare package actually looks at the 165,000 Australian families or Australian parents who want to get back into the workforce. It's how do we get those parents back into the workforce? How can they...
We'll come back onto that childcare package a bit again in a moment, but I just want to stay on this theme of the political versus the economic, Simon. I got a hunch I know where you might go on this, but I mean, look, politics obviously needs to take account of, as Fiona said, the realities of the Senate, but also because of this leadership stoush in February, Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey need to make sure their own party room is happy. The key question, of course they've got to have a mind to these things. The key question is, will this budget surrender on the fiscal challenge in order to maintain those political imperatives?
I'm concerned that it will, and I think the big problem the government's faced is that you can have a fiscally responsible budget that is politically sellable. That was clearly proven, I think, in the UK over the weekend, but also more prominently in New Zealand. What hasn't happened, though, is the government hasn't made the case properly at all. It hasn't won the debate on why it's doing what it's doing, and it hasn't won the debate over last year's budget that was supposed to set out a roadmap. Having lost all those debates, it is now very hard to turn around and say we're following this path that we've laid out, when in fact we're all over the shop here and we have no idea where the path is.
There is an economic argument that I think makes a lot of sense on the government's behalf, and we've talked a lot over recent years about fiscal policy and monetary policy operating at odds. And of course we've just had another interest rate cut, so obviously the monetary policy is trying to lift economic activity. So on that argument, Joe Hockey is right to say it would be the wrong time to cut too hard.
Well, look, there's 2 points there. The first is that you can reduce government spending, you can reduce government interference and actually boost the economy. Getting rid of regulations, removing wasteful spending, perverse incentives, all of that stuff actually boosts economic growth, not hinders it. But the second point is that there's a lot of research on monetary offset, the impact that monetary policy has versus fiscal policy. And the simple fact is that if the Reserve Bank is managing demand, to the extent that's possible, then the government shouldn't be trying to get involved in that fight on either side. What it should do, get its budget house in order, start removing the harmful effect that the 21,000 new regulations that came in the last government have put on the economy, and then start trying to generate growth by reducing government, not generate growth by boosting government spending.
Jenna, what's your view on this? Do you think that the politics is playing too big a role over economics? And also, as Simon mentioned then, that when you look to the UK and look to New Zealand, that is encouraging news for those in the government and in the community who would like to see a government more proactive on economic reform. You can get re-elected when you take tough decisions.
And when you make the right decisions. I mean, if you look at what Cameron has done in the UK and what John Key has done in New Zealand, they have cut personal tax rates. In New Zealand, they've also cut company tax rates. Yes, in New Zealand, they increased the VAT or
They
the
both
GST.
increased consumption taxes or GST.
These are hard decisions.
Cut education, cut numbers of
We're
public
not even
servants.
looking at that in Australia. Instead, we're looking at pouring, millions and millions of dollars into childcare. The problem is that the government now is running on empty. It didn't build up the political capital that it needed to do in that first budget. What you need to do when you have the first budget is there have to be equal doses of both courage and humility. And by humility, I mean making the case, as Simon says. What we've got now is we've got humility. We've got, Morrison doing a fantastic job explaining the various reforms, but they've lost the courage bit. So, they just don't have the balance right. And I have no great faith that this budget is where we ought to be. This is not a budget for our times, as Tony Abbott keeps saying.
Yeah, it's the lack of courage worries me, and in many ways the Liberals have done that to themselves because it's been exacerbated, I think, by the party room shenanigans. Let's just go to a little bit of Joe Hockey's interview with Laurie Oakes on Channel 9 this morning, just to give you a sense of the way the Treasurer is framing this situation.
We were trying to do too much in one budget. But the need for budget repair, the need to strengthen the Australian economy hasn't passed. We still need to do it. Someone has to stand up and do what is right for Australia. That's what we are doing. And politically, the rewards do come. The electorate sees it, and you've seen it in the United Kingdom this week.
There you go, Joe Hockey drawing some comfort from what happened in London. And while we're there, I think one of the great advantages here for the government, for the coalition, is what little Labor is doing. Here was Chris Bowen, the Shadow Treasurer, on the ABC this morning.
Government has thrown up the white flag on the deficit. We are seeing a budget which is completely contrary to everything we've been told for the last 12 months. We, on the other hand, have been laying out credible alternative plans which the government, for their own political reasons, refuses to embrace.
That's Chris Bowen there. He'll be very happy, Janet, because the Giants got up over the Hawthorn yesterday. But that's nonsense, isn't it, for Labor to be saying that they're putting up the responsible plan and it's the government that's given up on the economic challenge. It's Labor that's exacerbated the situation.
Yeah, look, Chris Bowen was right to say that last year we were told that the family tax benefits were all about savings.
Yes.
And now, of course, the childcare benefits will be paid out of those savings. There is an inconsistency. Maybe. But there is an inconsistency there. Where he got himself tangled was to even mention a white flag on a deficit. I mean, he's got a shadow Social Security Minister who doesn't think there's a problem on the age pension. He's got a leader whose argument about fairness is just whatever he wants it to be on a particular day. There's no reason or rationale to it. Again, doesn't think there's a problem on age pension. So I think it's very difficult for Labor to talk about hoisting the white flag on the budget deficit in relation to the government.
Credible plans are $2 billion, $2.5 billion in savings per year into a $50 billion deficit. That is what we're talking about here. That's,
This is the superannuation changes.
Exactly.
But why wouldn't you just pocket those? Why wouldn't Fiona Scott? Why wouldn't the government just pocket those changes that Labor has proposed to superannuation tax concessions? It only affects very wealthy people, and it's a start.
Well, if you look at Labor's plan is new taxes. I mean, it's bringing back the mining tax.
That's just a line, isn't it? That's the political line. That's really why you're opposing these savings, so you can have that line.
This was going to be their year of big ideas, and their big ideas has been rehashing taxes. So,
Was it maybe a mistake though back in the Howard Costello years to get rid of all taxes on all the earnings of super after you're 60 years old?
Well, look, I think they got the taxation system for super wrong in that it should be exempt on contribution, it should be exempt on earnings and then taxed.
50 years.
Here's the thing. You shouldn't support increasing super taxes, not just because they're new taxes, but because it's not fixing the holes in the superannuation system. Right now, people are blowing through their super in 10, 15 years. They're retiring early, using their super and ploughing money into the home to get the pension. Super maturation is going to reduce pension expenditure by 6%, just 6%. Before we start reducing balances and increasing taxes, we have to fix the problems with super first.
All right, Fiona, back to that point about Labor, though, because Labor are really doing so little because they block savings measures and they're really showing a lack of courage when it comes, as Janet says, almost many times just denying the fiscal challenge. Isn't it all the more reason that the government can afford to be a little bit more courageous?
Look, I think there's a few things, and just picking on a couple of points that have been said. I mean, when we saw the tax reforms come through by the previous previous government, the Henry Review. I mean, it was a review into tax, but of course the GST was left out of it completely. You know, if we are going to look at our tax system, now our tax system is the second most complicated tax system in the world behind the Americans. In a population of 23 million people, that's not necessarily sustainable. We need to have a tax system that's equipped for a 2020 environment, a 2030 environment. Now, that's why we're putting out a white paper. We've got the discussion papers that are all coming through to actually look at how we can have a productive and an efficient tax system. Not just what Labor is saying of adding super taxes or the mining taxes back in again. So I think when we talk about tax reform, it is part of a wider discussion. It is part of a discussion with what the states do. I mean, payroll tax would have to be one of the most insidious taxes that exists. If you want to talk about a tax that dampens the economy, well, payroll tax is one of those.
You're not going to get rid of that without increasing the GST. We'll leave the tax debate there for a moment, but stay in place. We'll take a short break now. When we come back, I want to talk up in more detail about the childcare announcements that were made today, and also I want to have a look at Bjorn Lomborg, the fact that the University of Western Australia has pathetically cowed to pressure and rejected his consensus centre. Back in a moment.
This is the future of mobility. This is reimagining the realms of possibility. This is the BMW i8, and it is these ideas that drive innovation in the BMW 5 Series. With BMW connected drive features, such as real-time traffic information and concierge services, you can experience the ideas of tomorrow today.
At NAB, we back businesses that back themselves. That's why we're committed to lending $1 billion a month. More yes for business, less missed opportunities. Call 13 10 12. NAB.
Occasionally, people come along who are not content with simply moving things along. They want to take things further. Tear up the plans and start again. Then, take another brave step. They will see the future and knock down the walls to reach it. Insist the dream is possible. Overcome all indecision and take a running jump into the uncharted. Bored by reinvention of the superficial kind, they want more. Because their goal isn't to improve on what has been done before, but to totally reimagine it.
Be inspired from the floor up with Choices Flooring's Inspiring Choices 2015 magazine. With over 100 pages of inspiring trends, you'll find the floor you've been searching for. Receive your free copy at your local store or go to choicesflooring.com.au.
At Camera House, purchase one of our advertised DSLR Canon cameras or lenses and earn up to $100 Canon cash to spend on any genuine Canon accessory. Plus bonus case and card with any advertised Canon compact camera purchased. Call, click or come in store.
Be ready for next with Colonial First State, Australia's largest provider of retirement solutions. Talk to an advisor to see how Colonial First State can help you.
Budget night is only the start of the task ahead for Joe Hockey.
Unless we take immediate action.
Join us live from the Great Hall of Parliament as the Treasurer addresses the National Press Club. Then on Thursday, Bill Shorten's budget reply. Full coverage, Sky News Live.
Back with the panel, we continued the discussion during the break with Fiona Scott, Liberal MP, Simon Cowan from the Centre for Independent Studies and Janet Albrechtsen. And Janet, let's start with you. I wanted to talk more about the childcare package, a big initiative from Scott Morrison today. I think it'll be politically popular, basically because there are no losers. Is it too much entitlement? Are we entrenching the government as the number one provider, financial provider of childcare? And is that a good or a bad thing?
Chris, what we're facing is really a psychological war. For 3 or 4 decades, we have been handing out money, or the government's been handing out money to more and more people. So we can't expect to turn it around immediately. But there is no sign in the childcare package of turning around this entitlement handout mentality at all. There's a little bit in the age pension package, which is great to see, but there's none whatsoever. And Scott Morrison, with due respect, can call it a workplace participation package, an economic package, until he's blue in the face. When you start talking about giving handouts, even 50% rebates to people who are earning $250,000, $500,000, it's got nothing to do with workplace participation. It's got everything to do with more handouts. So I think it fails the very test that the government has set up, fair and reasonable. It's failed when you're still giving a 50% rebate to people over, $185,000. It fails the budget for our time measure, because this is not a budget measure for our time when you are still handing out money to people who are earning significant amounts of money.
This is what worries me about it, Fiona, but I suppose it'll be politically popular because it's well targeted.
Well, look, I approach it from a member in Parliament in a outer Western Sydney seat, and Lindsay is in fact the 10th youngest electorate in the country. Childcare in a young electorate where there is a lot of families, a lot of children, is really probably the dinner time conversation. It's a significant issue. The inability of people being able to get to work and have the jobs and having the affordable, the flexible childcare that will enable that workforce participation. Now,
it's not all about the cost, though, and how much money they get from the government, is it? It's about availability of places, it's about the times they're available, about whether they're at the workplace. To my mind, deregulation would go a long way to solving many of these problems.
Well, I mean, look, there is a range of childcare options that you can use and utilise, and Penrith City Council is, in fact, one of the largest providers of childcare in the country, and as a parent, parents can choose whether they want nannies or they want family daycare or they want childcare, be it provided through a council or an independent childcare centre. But I guess the point I was making, if you're living in an outer metropolitan suburb like Penrith, which my electorate is, 2/3 of my electorate actually have to commute every single day. Now, 1/3 of that has to go all the way to the city and 1/3 into Greater Western Sydney. Now, if you're in Penrith and you're commuting here to Macquarie Business Park or somewhere like Norwest, Macquarie Business Park from Penrith can take you an hour and a half to 2 hours every single day. So having childcare services that enables people to be able to travel, to be able to commute, to be able to do all of those things is actually a really big challenge for people who want to be able to get back to work, because they've also now got a geographical boundary to be able to do that. So for me, when I look at it, what's important for the people of Lindsay who want to be able to commute, who want to be able to work, yes, it is childcare, but it's also having an infrastructure package. It's a package that will create jobs. So it's about having jobs and enabling the workforce to be able to take those jobs up and build the economy. So
it's a question who you target, though, Fiona. I'm not saying that we shouldn't provide childcare assistance to people earning family on $65,000. I think that's where we need to be targeting help, right? That is about workplace participation. When you are talking about giving money to families who are earning over $185,000, $250,000, $300,000, $500,000, right? This is a handout. This is not about workplace participation.
What we've seen is the government...
Isn't that fixed, Simon, by basically just having a cut-off point, but it's too politically difficult to put that in somewhere?
No, but the problem is the government has underwritten this massive increase in regulation and quality framework and massively increased the cost of childcare and reduced the flexibility of childcare, and that's been paid for through taxpayers' dollars for several years. Instead of trying to address the causes of the increase in cost and the reduction in availability, we're just going to put more money on the table and hope that that solves the problem.
All due respect to that, Simon, when you look at the quality framework which was set in place by the previous government, I mean, the ratios and all of those things that exist actually are enshrined in the state legislation.
They are indeed.
So you have quite a lot of challenges there with regard to childcare.
Scott Morrison made that point in the interview that while there's federal involvement, state governments control all that now. I do just want to move on from childcare, because there's one other issue I wanted to get onto before we finish up tonight, and this is the issue of Bjorn Lomborg and what was going to be the Australian Consensus Centre. You know, on this program we really welcome this decision a few weeks ago because Bjorn Lomborg is a great lateral thinker. He accepts climate change, climate science. He accepts that science. He is not a climate sceptic, climate denier. He looks at how we spend money on climate change and other global issues like poverty reduction, fighting preventable diseases, and asks questions about what's the best value for money. And it was going to be great to have him doing work in Australia, but of course the University of Western Australia has cowed to all sorts of pressure from Green politicians and student activists, and they've scrapped it. A university knocking back $4 million and knocking back the contest of ideas, knocking back a centre that was going to put forward some challenging new ideas. I think it's disgraceful, and here's what Barnaby Joyce had to say about it today.
Apparently, you're not allowed to have fascists, ISIS or Bjorn Lomborg speaking at the University of Western Australia. Obviously, they don't believe in the debate. Don't stand between a bureaucrat and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of consultancy fees, and I think that's the biggest threat that Bjorn Lomborg is to them, that he might actually question this unparalleled commitment to reporting for reporters' sake.
That's Agriculture Minister Barnaby Joyce there, Janet. Now, this is an extraordinary decision, isn't it? Bjorn Lomborg is smart, he's world-renowned. You don't have to agree with everything he says to understand that he's an important contributor to debates about how we use aid, what we're doing to combat climate change and other global problems.
What are these people afraid of? What are these hollow men and women who made this decision and the silly students who are cheering the decision? What is it that they are afraid of? That people might have different views? I mean, these are the very people who talk about diversity every day of the week, diversity of gender, diversity of minorities, cultures, but diversity of opinion, well, that doesn't seem to hold much muster at all. I think shame on them. The fact that this has happened tells you the poor, what has happened in our university sector in Australia. If the University of Western Australia cannot support a diversity of views, I mean, let's face it, Bjorn Lomborg's one mistake, according to the orthodoxy, is that he doesn't support a carbon price. He thinks there are better ways to spend our money, better ways to deal with the environment. Such as research
into green technology.
Yeah, but the orthodoxy, if you challenge that orthodoxy, you are no longer welcome at what is meant to be, a centre of intellectual pursuit in this nation.
It's a disgraceful decision. If you can't have a contest of ideas at a university, well then where can you have a contest of ideas? Here on Viewpoint, hopefully. Look, that's all we've got time for tonight. Thanks very much for joining us again. Janet Albrechtsen, Simon Cowan and Fiona Scott, the member for Lindsay, who will be driving from Lindsay down to Canberra in the morning for a big budget week. Stay tuned to Sky News all week for the budget news, and stay tuned now for Paul Murray Live.